Thank you for joining the Resilient Cyber Show. My name is Chris Hughes, along with my co-host, Dr. Nikki Robinson.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're joined by Miss Lily Zeleke. Lily, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris and Nikki.
Yeah, definitely. We're really excited to chat with you. I know it was a bit of a journey to get you on because of some technical difficulties with your system. So we're excited to have you here. But for folks that don't know you and haven't been following you, do you mind telling us a bit about your background and the role you're in now?
I sure will. And thank you so much for working through the technical difficulties. And folks, if you see my camera shaking, I'm holding my phone. So that's why we wanted to make sure we brought you this program as scheduled. So I really appreciate Chris and Nikki for their indulgence. That said, I'm currently the Deputy CIO for Information Enterprise at the DOD CIO. I've actually been in DOD CIO for about 14 years. And with DOD in some form or capacity for the last 24 years, almost 25 years. My main career, I'm an RF engineer by trade, and I have a systems engineering master's background in systems engineering. Spectrum regulations and policy, broadband policy is really what I built a career on until about 4 years ago. I pivoted to do some budget and programming, et cetera, and remained here in DOD CIO within the Resources and Analysis Directorate or Deputy CIO. And I did the IT budget, managed that and internal budget, et cetera. And then here I am now as the Deputy CIO for Information Enterprise.
That's excellent. Yeah, you've got quite the background in the DoD space. I thought I had a lengthy background in that environment. So you've seen quite the journey when it comes to technology and software and things like that, which is perfect for today's topics. We want to chat with you about cloud and software modernization in the DoD. So first up, I wanted to ask you, as far as cloud goes, we've finally seen the introduction of JWCC get finalized and come to fruition after quite the journey itself to get there. I wanted to ask, for folks not familiar with it, do you mind telling us a bit about JWCC and then also the role you see it playing in DoD cloud adoption?
Oh, I would love to do that. And obviously, as you said, JWCC is a long time coming, an enterprise cloud for the department, multi-cloud at unclassified, secret, top secret, providing enterprise cloud capability for the department. And it's a contract vehicle. It's not just any contract vehicle. It is really honestly the fulcrum. Why do we say that? Because we've been doing cloud for a long time in the department. The services have pretty mature cloud platforms that they've acquired various cloud requirements through. And obviously us trying to get to an enterprise cloud, it's taken a journey, and here we are. And it's really an incredible collaborative accomplishment for the department. And it's imperative that we use it for really the goodness that it brings. And what are the things that it brings? From my perspective, I just mentioned the classification levels. The ability to acquire cloud directly from the cloud service providers is the other piece, which I know some of the cloud capabilities that we have, most of them come through integrators, and that's not a bad thing. However, it's sort of, it's not standardized. So everybody sort of does what they think is best for the organization, and it's not really in an enterprise manner. So JWCC will allow us to get there. The other piece is tactical edge. This is really the first time that we are really reaching to the tactical edge. And we're not going to stop there, actually. There's quite a bit of global presence with JWCC, where it's going to allow us to do more of an enterprise multi-cloud on a global basis. And obviously, there are certain things that need to be worked out there, as you know, sovereignty, et cetera. But right now, we will be able to do tactical edge. We're doing some testing. As you know, we've released our OCONUS cloud strategy and some joint capabilities that we're trying to pilot and test. So it's going to allow us to do that. It also enables us with the incredible capabilities that the DISA hack has put in place relative to acquiring and being able to sort of track our investment. That is another step further that this is going to take us for us to be able to have better insight into our investment, the ability to acquire and get the capabilities in place very quickly. So that's the other piece. In addition, commercial parity, really, we have some of the best hyperscale CSPs, as you know, Microsoft, AWS, Google, and Oracle. So we have a variety with different expertise that are going to be technologies that are going to be brought to the table. So we're going to be able to leverage directly from these CSPs the various technologies, including for cybersecurity and other things as we know it today. So there's various things that I can say about JWCC that we are working. So one of the things I would like to say is, obviously, this is going to require some serious collaboration and coordination across the department. And as you've heard, I'm sure Mr. Sherman has talked about it and other in some of his interviews, that we are going to come out with guidance that's going to enable us not to mandate or sort of, bring the hammer down, but really do no harm first, but be able to start leveraging JWCC for the incredible goodness that it is, so we can bring all of the components around and also enable the services and the military departments and other components to use their platforms better in a way that is consistent across the entire enterprise. And I think that's in a long way to say that we have some goodness here with JWCC.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's amazing what's going on with cloud right now. And to shift gears a little bit, because we want to talk about software and software modernization as well. There has been such a focus on software supply chain security, and I can't even believe this statistic, but in the last 3 years, software supply chain attacks are up 742%, which is wild. What are your thoughts on how the DOD is approaching securing the software supply chain? S-bombs have been, in the news and definitely a big topic recently. So, what do you feel around that, and any challenges that might be around that as well?
Yeah, and I think this all goes to, our intent with the software modernization implementation plan, the zero trust strategy. As you know, we're in the midst of, the department is in the midst of implementing the executive order that really looks for us, the federal government as a whole, to start shoring up our cybersecurity for the current state that we are in this world of increased cybersecurity threats, as you point out, including our supply chains. And honestly, we've been doing software for a long time, but I think the increased software relevance and how we do pretty much everything depends on software now. It's no surprise, right, that software is the target now. So from our perspective, clearly we're in the nascent stages of implementing the S-bomb, as you point out, and that's one of the things in the executive order and obviously statutory requirement. Of course, why is that a challenge? There's challenges there. Why is that? Because we do software, but we don't. It's all a compilation of different components coming together when we implement software, and then there's handoffs. So we're not doing just one and done, or we're not starting from scratch every time we're looking to do a capability through software mechanisms. So there is major complexities in that regard. So there's going to have to be some of these things we talk about as DevSecOps and continuous ATO, authorization to operate, automation, the ability to, sense and telemetry to know the environment. All of these are at the heart of zero trust, but also our ability to do a more agile and the ability to make quick decisions and be able to keep track of information, hand off information from development to operation through cybersecurity. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible if we're going to try to do this in a paperwork or some sort of a repository where you put your information. It's going to be challenging. So it's going to have to be eventually. We're going to have to go through the road and really the painstaking process of doing software in a way that it is iterative and you're able to see and have insight through monitoring and through automation and AI. All these things we talk about are going to have to come to fruition for us to be able to, in a real way, real time or near real time, have insight into the software, all the way to the development and information about the software.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. We're definitely seeing a shift from that, kind of static snapshot in time approach of security, to more real-time telemetry, like you said, from the environment, the system, and, all driving towards things like continuous authorization, like you touched on, which is a topic of interest to me that I'll bring up here in a little bit. But I wanted to ask you as well, on the software supply chain front, we know that there's been a lot of focus on open source software and the role that it plays, in commercial industry as well as in the Department of Defense. And we saw the open source software memo, for example, come out not too long ago from DOD. What are your thoughts around the role that open source software plays when it comes to DOD software modernization efforts?
It's a big deal. It's important to have open source software for some of the reasons I mentioned. We don't just start from scratch. Where we have really goodness and good baseline, we want to reuse and we want to be able to do open source software in a way that benefits. However, we have to balance it with cybersecurity. Also, when you talk about open source software, I think it's the management of it that scares people, right? It's in some sort of a hub, and there's various people contributing and doing making changes. So change management, et cetera, is something that probably will make people nervous. However, it doesn't. It shouldn't be the hindrance for us to be able to figure out different ways for us to leverage as much as we can open source software while keeping in mind the really critical importance of keeping the information secure. And we should never share or do open source software for proprietary items or clearly classified information or sensitive information. And that's really the memo that DoD CIO had put out a few years back, is basically saying that, where let's leverage as much open source software as possible where we can. However, it's critical that we protect information where it's necessary, and just encourage folks that that's the way, really, the heart and mind that we should come at this from. Is everything worked out? No. But is it possible for us to work everything out and incrementally and as we do software and as we become a very software driven environment, we're going to have to work it out.
Yeah, it is. It becomes so complex when you're dealing with open source software and development and trying to make sure that you're protecting, the right information. And I'm sure that it is highly complex. And I wanted to ask, as we're talking about software and the DoD software modernization efforts, there are a ton more software factories across the DoD. And I think the number is around 30 different software factories. So can you talk a little bit about how key these software factories have been to DoD and to the actual modernization effort?
Oh, they are so critical. They're the proving ground for everything we just talk about, right? Whether it's DevSecOps or our ability to really make changes to software, as we want to call it, on the fly. I'm not sure it's that simple, but that they are the proving ground, and really some really great things are being done in software factories. And to be honest with you, when we talk about numbers about software factories, I sort of say, like, why can't we have as many as we need to get the mission done if we're doing it right? So yes, understandably so, we need to really start coming together to figure out the guardrails to enable folks to innovate and have the software factories necessary to meet the mission. And there are in the services, there's quite a few software factories. So the things that I think about when I think about software factories, just like anything else, whether it's systems or we just talked about cloud contracts or cloud, we don't want there to be software factory sprawl. So where 5 software factories are doing the same exact thing, now we're going to go right back to investments going to things that we could funnel to critical capabilities. So really, from a software factory standpoint, I know the Software Factory Coalition, which is really the coalition of the willing, they've come together to start really addressing some of these challenges that I just mentioned, where I really believe it's important. It starts from them, but also as for me as a policymaker and for the department, we need to take that and hand off. And now we really need to make sure that we start shaping the guardrails without honestly hindering this incredible change of culture and change of mindset, where we are trying to really move in a way that we are delivering capability at speed. We are delivering capability pinpoint and the ability to change things out in a way that we've never done before. It's not easy, but we really need to continue to refine and move forward. And really, that's where we're at with the software factories. And understandably so, that's one of the things we'll work through the implementation plan and which should be coming out fairly soon. We're like very close to Mr. Sherman signing that out. And obviously the deputy is very supportive of this. And I really believe one of the other things that I want to make sure I mention about software factories is we also don't want to hinder them by overloading them, like each software factory. So one of the things I've heard personally is the software factories sort of getting requests above and beyond their capacity. So it sort of takes away from that agility that we're looking for. So that goes at the heart of, again, sort of having guardrails. The other piece is really, let's test them. Let's give them some really like tough things to solve. I think some of the software factories sort of feel like they're getting like the simple things, the cute things, I think is what they call them. But really, let's test them. Let's give them some critical hard problems. And then the other piece is, I think we've done software and really more agile software for the bigger warfighting capabilities or platforms. But software factories are also now solving business process problems like financial systems and financial processes, et cetera. So we really need to look at our software factories as really being there and having the department's requirements end to end to solve really whatever problems we need, whether it's logistics or whether it's a warfighting capability or whether it's a financial capability. I think they will play a huge part.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know we've had the pleasure of speaking to some people at some of those various software factories, and I know that they are working very hard and working on lots of complex problems. Yeah. So I did want to touch on something, sort of shifting gears here, talking about the workforce. And this is really, it's sort of an industry, problem, I think, especially when we're talking about cybersecurity and workforce, and how do you recruit talent, and then how do you retain them? How do you sort of handle that? And so can you talk about maybe any of the workforce challenges that DoD has had, or and maybe how to remedy some of those, especially when it comes to cloud and software modernization?
No, absolutely. And I mean, you hit it right on the nose. We have challenges because the technology and the requirement is moving so rapidly that it is impossible to hire. Even if there were people around enough to be hired, it's impossible to hire them and integrate them into the system and etc. But the bottom line is, I mean, we're getting into a complex world. It requires technical and big business acumen and the various things that you really need to have to be able to move the ball forward in this arena, that really we're having to take very seriously the workforce matter. And as you know, the department just released the workforce strategy, where in implementation, we're going to have to get creative on various fronts, including, in the past where we may have classified certain job requirements in a certain way. Now we're really going to have to start being very specific in the kinds of requirements for AI or data or any of the things that we need, software types of things that we need. We're going to have to help folks have the flexibility to be able to fill various positions. We're going to have to really get after upskilling, and I know we say that all the time, but upskilling, I always think of it as, I'm in here, I've actually done budget, I've done spectrum, now I'm sort of like a hardcore IT, but I was a C4 like we need to give people an opportunity to traverse internal to organizations and train them and give them opportunities to have that kind of training. And really, honestly, some of it is going to have to be on the job training, where you bring in folks that have some sort of translatable capabilities, but some of it is we're just going to have to grow into it. But we really have to approach this intentionally. And obviously, it's going to be, again, I hate to use the word journey, but I think we're on a major journey as we switch over to, this software-driven world. So I'm not, the workforce expert, but I can tell you that we have a great need, and I'm not sure, the ability for us to just go out and try to get industry folks is going to cover all the gaps that we have. So it is an internal effort as well as external effort, where we're just going to have to go after it, with rigor to be able to get as much as we can in any way we can, including training, internal upskilling, trying to get change classifications, the ability to do direct hire, other things that we have at our hands already from congressional, offerings that we should implement all of these things. So it is a hard problem, just like any of the other things we just talked about. But again, here we are very serious about it, and we're going to have to really get after it.
Yeah, just quick comment before I turn it over to Chris for his last question, because I think that's, we've had this conversation before with other guests too, where we talk about just in cybersecurity and in IT in general, in the industry, that there's trying to bring people in and retaining people too.
Yeah.
Keeping people in is certainly a challenge. So I can definitely appreciate that. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Yeah, no, I think those are all great insights in terms of not just industry. Obviously DoD will always need industry partners, but you need that internal workforce as well, because they're the ones that are going to oversee and drive a lot of these efforts, and from a leadership perspective. So spot on. So you said something earlier that I have to touch on. You talked about, use the term continuous ATO. And anyone that's done, work in the federal space on IT initiatives has likely heard the term ATO and may cringe when they hear the word, depending on their experiences. But we've heard a lot of efforts, in language from other leaders, talking about making a shift from the, kind of compliance checkbox culture that we all have come to know in the DoD and federal space to one of, continuous ATO, talking about cyber readiness, for example. And you touched on this with some of your comments about, real-time telemetry of systems, and we saw a continuous ATO memo and such come out now. I just wanted to kind of reiterate and get your thoughts on like how critical it is to make that shift when we talk about enabling DevSecOps and cloud and things like that.
It's an imperative. I mean, really, there's no way around it. We have got to do it. Again, like you said, it is at the heart of enabling zero trust, enabling DevSecOps, enabling any of these AI ML. I mean, we talk about JADC2 and joint, operations. All of these things in such a fast-paced, a fast-changing technology, changing at a pace that we must keep up, and really to keep pace with our adversaries and pacing threats. That it is going to have to be part of the equation. It cannot be something we just sort of brush aside and try to do everything else. It really is important. And to your point, all of these things I talk about, drive at the user experience as well, which we are very, very focused on. Not that we never cared about user experience. It's so critical, but it has become even more critical now that we are looking at, our computers and we're looking at software and we're looking at all of the AI ML things that are going to require us to touch a digital enterprise capability in one way or another. The user experience is an imperative. And in my view, having the continuous authorization and sort of cutting out some of the handoffs that are taking forever to get us to a decision point, and the ability to automate those things, and the ability to have real-time insight and telemetry, and the ability to lay out infrastructure. If once you've built it, why rebuild it again? Infrastructure as code. All these things are an imperative to our ability to move forward in the kind of way that we are setting out and we're looking to do. So the software modernization implementation plan, zero trust, and any of these initiatives, the workforce strategy itself is also not just about cybersecurity. It's actually a digital workforce that we're looking at. So all of these things come into play, and a CATO is, part of that equation.
I wanted to say a huge thank you. We covered so many different topics today, from cloud and software modernization to workforce challenges and everything and beyond with the DoD. So I want to say a huge thank you, Miss Lily Zeleke, for joining us today. We're so grateful to have you here. That was our last question. Thank you so much. And that'll wrap us up for this week. And we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.